So if you bought your camera like I did with a kit lens, now I did this because I wanted to spend the main part of my budget on the camera body to get the best technology. And getting it with the kit lens meant I didn't have to compromise my budget. But after a while, you get that feeling of, am I really getting the best out of my equipment by using a kit lens? Well, I've been on that journey too. And I think I may have found the upgrade. The Sigma 17 to 40mm f1.8 DC Art lens might just be the lens that you're looking for. So in this video, I'll show you why I'm replacing the Sony 16 to 55mm kit lens, break down the differences between the two, give you the pros and cons, and of course, real-world footage. So let's start with comparing the two lenses. Starting with the weight, the kit lens is much lighter than the Sigma, which is a much larger, heavier build. The zoom on the kit lens is 50mm power zoom, whereas the Sigma is a 40mm manual zoom. Aperture on the kit lens is 3.5 to 5.6, whereas the Sigma is 1.8 to 16. And here's the specs if you want to pause and have a quick look at them. Okay, so let's now move on. Look at the pros and the cons for each lens, and then we'll move on to some real-world examples. Okay, so let's start with the Sony. The Sony is very small, light, and compact. So this may actually be more suited for travel photography, especially vlogging. With its lightweight and 16mm at the wide end, this lens may actually be better for vlogging. The lens also has some degree of stabilization built in. It has OSS, but it's not something I really use. I tend to use a gimbal for vlogging because it gives me that extra stability. So what about the cons? The optics on this lens are okay. I've got some good photos, done some good videos, but they're probably not the best. They're not amazing. Also, the aperture on this lens starts at 3.5, and as you go through the zoom range, the light is decreased. So by the time you're at the 50mm zoom, you're at 5.6 on the aperture. So it's probably not going to give you that separation you want in your images from the subject. And the bokeh is probably not going to be the best. And also there isn't much control on this lens at all. So all of the controls you have to do through the camera. The only control you really have is this rocker for the zoom control. But saying that, it is a power zoom and you can control it from the camera. Let's now have a look at the Sigma. The pros for the Sigma are that you can maintain the aperture of f1.8 throughout the zoom range. So this isn't going to change your aperture as you move through the zoom. And the optics on this lens are far superior. They are the Art series optics from Sigma, so they're extremely good quality. Because you can hold that aperture at f1.8, you're going to get better subject separation. That bokeh that you're been looking for, that everyone's chasing, are achievable with this lens. And this lens is a solid premium build. It just feels nice in the hand. On this lens, we have several manual controls: a focus ring, a focus hold button, a zoom ring, an aperture lock switch, the aperture ring, auto manual focus switch, programmable button, and the aperture click declick for the aperture ring. Now, what are the downsides of this lens? This lens is heavy. So if you want a light travel lens, this probably isn't going to be the one. This lens weighs nearly 5 times more than the kit lens. The other issue, or the other downside, is the zoom. So you're now losing 1mm off the wide end, so it starts at 17, and then only goes to 40 at the tele end. So you are losing 10mm of zoom capability. This lens has no built-in stabilization. To me, that's not an issue because I normally use a gimbal, But if you're not using a gimbal, there is no stabilization built into this lens. So the last of the cons on this one is going to have to be the price. This lens is more than 3 times the price of the kit lens. So again, that's another consideration. Okay, so all of these specs, the pros and the cons, don't really mean anything at the moment. So let's now have a look at the performance of this lens, starting with photography. So this is an image taken with a kit lens. It's the raw straight out of the camera, and this is it corrected in Lightroom. And let's just compare that to the same image taken now with the Sigma, and we'll correct that again in Lightroom, and then put the 2 images side by side. Looking at these 2 images, the Sigma has captured way more detail and looks just that fraction more sharper than the kit lens image. So again, we've taken another image here with the kit lens and again corrected it in Lightroom. And I've done exactly the same again with the Sigma. So I've tried to keep them as close as possible as I can to each other. And then we'll put these 2 images side by side and have a look at the differences. Again, the Sigma image is much sharper and it contains a lot more detail. And this is now just the 3rd image that I've taken with the kit lens. Again, this is at 50mm. And let's compare that now to the Sigma at 40mm. As you'll notice with all of the images captured on the Sigma, the background blur is much better due to the aperture of f1.8. Looking at these 2 images side by side, again the Sigma is much sharper and captured a lot more detail. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the video now. We'll start off with the autofocus, just comparing the 2 lenses of autofocus. But looking at the autofocus between the 2, there really isn't much difference at all in the 2 lenses. So let's move on and have a look at some other usage with video. Okay, so this is now the Sigma 17 to 40mm on the gimbal. So I'm now just doing a walk-in headshot, just like I did with the Sony. But I do notice this is much heavier to hold, and I do have to hold it further away because of the different focal difference with the 17 rather than the 16mm. Looking at the 2 images side by side, again you can see the Sigma has captured more detail, is sharper, and has a better background blur. So we're indoors now in a low light situation just to see how the Sony lens copes. And now we'll move over to the Sigma and see what the results look in the same situation. Okay, so this is now the Sigma in the low light environment. But what you are going to notice is a massive difference in the ISO. And this is because we can have the aperture wide open at f1.8, whereas the Sony could only do the f3.5. So it couldn't let in as much light and get the ISO down nearly as much. Because of the aperture on the Sigma, again, it outperforms the kit lens in low light situations. So in my normal studio environment, I've got my kit lens on the camera at the moment. And this is what I've been probably using for 9 months now. So it's served me well doing videos like this. And what we're going to do now is switch this over to the Sigma and see what difference it makes in this environment. So this is now with the Sigma lens attached. Hopefully now you can see the difference. But what I will do is I'll take a quick freeze frame now and let you have a look at the 2 side by side, just to do a quick compare. Background separation on the Sigma is much better. You'll notice that lovely blur to the background. And if we now have a look at the side by side, the Sigma again is sharper and clearer. Okay, so let's come now to answering the question. Is the upgrade to the Sigma really worth it? We've looked at the image quality. It's sharper, both in video and in the photos. The bokeh, if you want that background blur, is much better with the Sigma due to its fast aperture. But it does come at a cost with the weight increase. So if you're just using it for maybe vlogging and casual photography, then maybe the cost isn't worth it. But for using it like I do, producing YouTube videos, here in the studio, outside, it's probably going to be worth the investment for myself. But I can't make that decision for you. You have to weigh up the pros and the cons as to whether this lens really is the one that's ideal for you. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. If I haven't covered any areas you want more information, and I'll try and answer them as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time today watching this video, and I'll see you again soon in another video.